I'm back. Let me just start this video with a major trigger warning, okay? We're gonna be talking about weight loss, body weight, dieting, and if that's not for you, that's okay. I'll see you next week. Sound the alarms. Kim K got rid of her BBL, y'all. Sound the alarms. I'm kidding, but am I? The internet is aflutter with lots of anxiety about thin being back in. Thin is in. And listen, as a product of the early 2000s, I get you. I'm a 30-year-old lady. By the way, did you see Jenna's wedding photos? I cried. Anyway, I'm a 30-year-old lady, so I was ripe for the picking when the early 2000s came rolling around. And it was no longer the heroin chic of the 90s, but now in the early 2000s, we had this little thing called the internet. And tabloids were more popular and prominent than ever, and we still hadn't learned about the magic of Photoshop, and so it was the perfect storm for absolutely being bombarded with images of extremely thin women without the knowledge that we have now about how Photoshop works. And this era of the early 2000s, I'd say, was in part ushered in by none other than the 2001 film Bridget Jones's Diary. You know the one where Renee Zellweger famously gained a whopping 30 pounds for that role, something that people, including my mother, could not stop talking about at the time. Sorry, Mom, I know you watch these, but I do have distinct memories of you commenting on her body and her weight gain. Let's not beat around the bush. Love you. Anyway, and the entire storyline in Bridget Jones's Diary is about this absolute pathetic slob of a woman who is a disgusting mess, mostly because she's chubby. And then she weighs herself to see how chubby she is, 136 pounds. 136 pounds. And she says she really needs to lose 20 pounds. ASAP. And then for the rest of my teens after seeing that, I thought that 115 pounds was a reasonable goal weight for me in my body. And because I was 145 pounds, and absolutely, I kid you not, convinced that I was a fat, disgusting blob unworthy of love. Like the level of body dysmorphia and pure self-loathing I had as a teen, I assumed that whenever I walked into a room, all people could see was my big fat fatty body and all my big fat. My biggest fear was that when people saw me, they would later describe me as bigger. For the record, this is what I looked like at the time. And that's on body dysmorphia, kids. But that's not even the point. The point is that I spent so much time and energy, and I put out my own light when I walked into rooms because the thin is in culture had worn me ragged, okay? Let's not forget also The Devil Wears Prada, where Anne Hathaway is bullied and shamed into going from her big fat fatty size 6 body to an acceptable size 4. And we just got done with the holiday season, during which I was reminded that Natalie, Hugh Grant's love interest in the film Love Actually, was considered chubby, with legs the size of tree trunks, and Shallow Hal, in which Gwyneth Paltrow dons a fat suit, and the joke is that Jack Black, who, listen, I got a crush on Jack Black, but like, he's no waif himself, all right? A man like Jack Black would have to be literally hypnotized into falling for a fat woman, and isn't it so funny that he's going out in public and being seen in public with this big fat woman and she's breaking chairs? Hilarious. Okay, these movies, this type of culture, it's all on top of the tabloids that were monitoring every celebrity waistline and then blasting it at us at the grocery store checkout aisles when I was a teen and all I wanted to do was buy my damn ice cream with my waitressing money in peace. Like, no wonder I thought I was hideous. Every single thing in the early 2000s told me that if I weighed more than 115 pounds, that I was a disgusting swamp monster that no one would love. And now there are signs that extremely thin bodies akin to the heroin chic of the 90s are coming back. Kim K generally agreed to be one of the hugest trendsetters in the entire world. Whether you personally are influenced by her or not, you probably down the line are at some point influenced by what Kim K is doing. Just like that hideous blue sweater in The Devil Wears Prada.
What you don't know is that that sweater is not just blue, it's actually cerulean.
The runways are also getting really scary skinny. Even champions of the thick girls like Mindy Kaling and Adele have revealed extreme body transformations recently. And this all got me thinking, about weight loss culture through the ages, and how, frankly, it's never not been toxic, you know? Like, thin has always been in. It's just that sometimes the culture has allowed for certain pockets of fat to appear in very specific areas. And then women have followed suit to make those pockets of fat that they do have comply with what the culture dictates by either making them go away entirely, or cinching them into the right places with corsets, or doing as the Kardashians do and surgically rearranging where their fat is. And because of women's willingness to contort themselves into the latest body trends, whether by sheer brainwashing or mental illness, or by, I would say, complicit adherence, in the case of women like Kim K, who can make their bodies look like literally anything they want, who know that they set trends that teenage girls are watching, and who decide to sell waist trainers and weight loss lollipops. The patriarchy is awful, but it is also self-reinforcing by some of the most brainwashed among us, never forget. Because of this, a lot of not just unhealthy but downright dangerous products and services have come onto the market over the years to help women contort themselves and their bodies into submission. And with those dangerous products comes, you guessed it, lawsuits. I'm a lawyer after all. Always gotta bring it back to the law. So let's jump back in time. So there were always various drugs and herbs to help with weight loss or weight management. They've been around for centuries. I'm not gonna go back that far. I'm just gonna focus on the 1900s onward. First, cigarettes. Prior to the 1920s, smoking cigarettes was seen as very unladylike, an activity meant for men and for the low-class ladies of the night. Remember in the Titanic, where Rose's mom is like, I wish you wouldn't do that, when she sees Rose smoking out of one of those long cigarette holders. Those cigarette holders, they're the only reason I wish that I smoked. They look so cool. But also, smoking is bad, kids, okay? Anyway, Titanic was in 1912. By the 1920s, cigarette companies realized that they had kind of, you know, tapped the full market of men who smoke and ladies of the night. And so they decided, how can I figure out a way to market to middle and upper class ladies? And one of the ways that they did so was by encouraging them to smoke as a method of suppressing their appetite and maintaining a lower weight. Lucky Strike had a campaign with the slogan, reach for a lucky instead of a sweet. Like, it was overt. And it worked. By the roaring 20s, when thin was very much in and the flapper girl had to be straight as a beanpole, cigarettes were all the rage among women, not least because of their slimming effects, which is a selling point that frankly exists to this day. Even if tobacco companies can't technically make those types of health claims, it still is pervasive in the culture at large. Okay, and then this surge in the popularity of cigarettes as a weight loss aid increased the demand for tobacco products, which encouraged cigarette companies to produce new products with higher nicotine content. Some even began adding various chemicals like formaldehyde and cyanide to their cigarettes, which were added to help the cigarettes taste more appealing in order to boost even more sales. And of course, out of this industry, many decades later, when cigarettes were officially linked to various cancers, came the big tobacco lawsuits of the 1990s. In what's called the Master Settlement Agreement in 1998, the four largest tobacco companies in the US, Philip Morris, R.J. Reynolds, Brown & Williamson, and Lorillard, reached a settlement with 46 states in which they agreed to pay a minimum of $206 billion over 25 years to compensate for the medical costs of caring for individuals with smoking-related illnesses. The settlement also required that the tobacco companies stop certain tobacco marketing practices, like making health claims and marketing to children, and it dissolved three industry groups: the Tobacco Institute, the Center for Indoor Air Research, and the Council for Tobacco Research. The money from the settlement also funds an anti-smoking advocacy group that you've probably heard of because it probably came into your middle school, called the Truth Initiative. Shortly after, the DOJ filed a similar lawsuit against the industry claiming fraud and racketeering. We talked about racketeering, or RICO, in the R. Kelly lawsuit video that I made a while back. It's a widespread scheme to commit crimes, basically. That lawsuit stretched out for years, until finally in 2006, federal district court judge Gladys Kessler issued a 1,500-page ruling, finding that, and I quote, over the course of more than 50 years, defendants lied, misrepresented, and deceived the American public, including smokers and the young people they avidly sought as replacement smokers, about the devastating health effects of smoking and environmental tobacco smoke. They suppressed research, they destroyed documents, they manipulated the use of nicotine so as to increase and perpetuate addiction, they distorted the truth about low tar and light cigarettes so as to discourage smokers from quitting, and they abused the legal system to achieve their goal, to make money with little if any regard for individual illness and suffering, soaring health costs, or the integrity of the legal system. Yikes.
Yikes.
Okay, so cigarettes started out in the early 1900s being a weight loss aid. Then the 30s and 40s rolled around. The country was plagued by a Great Depression and then food rationing for the war. But then by mid-century, food rationing was lifted, the suburbs were booming, and with that came a renewed obsession with remaining slim, especially amongst the brand new middle-class suburbanite housewife. And you know what they turned to for help? Good old speed. Classic amphetamines, just keeping that metabolism chugging along. And those amphetamines had actually been perfected during World War II. That's right, American soldiers were legally doped up to the high heavens in order to fight anxiety and fear and get out there on the battlefield and fight like men. And of course, the company that produced wartime amphetamines, they were like, oh no, the war is over, what now? So they hired some doctors to conclude that amphetamines were safe for weight loss. And those pills would then be combined with other pills, which were needed to help counteract the side effects of the stimulants, so that people would go into these clinics that would pop up, get these complicated prescriptions, and come out with a handful of pills that felt like it was personalized just for them, but was actually just a shtick for them to sell more speed. And those pills became known as rainbow diet pills because of the handful of many colored pills that you had to take every day to stay slim. And this, of course, quickly led to abuse, especially during the counterculture movement in the 60s and 70s, and it became a legally prescribed drug epidemic. And culturally, the US wasn't really aware of the epidemic that was happening until the deaths of a number of people, including a handful of young white women, which usually tends to get people's attention more than anything else. And then there was a series of congressional hearings, which led to the passage in 1970 of the Controlled Substances Act, which classified amphetamines as a Schedule II drugs. Opioids like Vicodin and fentanyl are also Schedule II drugs that have led to a modern drug addiction epidemic, though that's less related to weight loss, but the synergy is there. And much like fentanyl, when straight-up amphetamines became less marketable, Big Pharma just came up with a substitute, and the substitute was called phentermine, which was later combined with fenfluramine in the early 1990s and given the fun name fen-phen. This drug was never FDA approved, but it was still pushed as an effective and safe weight loss drug. Finally, the miracle drug that we'd all been looking for, fen-phen. Just let the pounds melt away. By the mid-1990s, the company who produced fen-phen, American Home Products, realized that their patent for fenfluramine was about to expire and they didn't want to miss out on those profits, so they invented a new drug called dexfenfluramine to keep the protected patent status on their weight loss drug, and they rebranded it as Redux, which received FDA approval in 1996. And then 1 year later, in 1997, two separate studies appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine linking fen-phen and Redux to several serious side effects, including heart disease, cardiac valvular disease, primary pulmonary hypertension, and cardiac fibrosis. And these studies declared that an abnormal number of people using fen-phen or Redux showed signs of these conditions. They said symptoms were seen in approximately 30% of the surveyed population, which was an extraordinarily high number given the patients' ages. And after these initial studies were published, many more users of fen-phen and Redux came forward with complaints of harmful side effects. So then the FDA quickly withdrew its approval, and the lawsuits started pouring in. In 1999, American Home Products agreed to a $3.75 billion settlement of a class action lawsuit representing all 6 million users of fen-phen. It was one of the largest monetary rewards for a product liability case in history. Okay, that takes us to the early 2000s, a time when people's willingness to take unregulated supplements was curiously on the rise, and Thin Is In pushed people to try new diet pills. By 2009, 15% of Americans had tried taking dietary supplements for weight loss. The biggest seller? Hydroxycut. Remember them?
Millions of Americans have made 𝗦𝗥𝗡𝗏𝗏 the #1 selling weight loss product because it works.
I'm Allison from California. I lost 26 pounds fast with Hydroxycut.
Subjects using the patented primary ingredients in Hydroxycut lost an average of up to 4.5 times the weight than with diet and exercise alone.
Hydroxycut had this random mix of substances, many of which had the potential to harm users, including hydroxycitric acid, which harmed the liver. In 2009, the FDA officially recalled Hydroxycut products based on findings that they could cause serious liver problems, which led to at least one death. And then, of course, the class action lawsuits came pouring in. In 2014, 𝗦𝗥𝗡𝗏𝗏 reached a $14 million settlement, resulting in each member of the class receiving a $15 refund. And 𝗦𝗥𝗡𝗏𝗏's fate? Oh, they're still alive and well, my friends. They reformulated their product and plopped them right back on the shelves. You can buy it right now. And you might be wondering, like, why don't we regulate supplements more? How are these companies able to just put these harmful products on the market? Well, the way the law is written, the FDA doesn't actually have regulatory authority to require pre-release proof and testing of anything that's not technically a drug. In order for the FDA to have to approve of it before being released, it has to be classified as a drug, and that's a limited list. They can regulate the supplements afterwards, once they're in the market and prove to be harmful, like 𝗦𝗥𝗡𝗏𝗏, but supplement manufacturers don't have to get approval before going to market. Not to mention the fact that there are so many supplements out there, and it is really hard to conclusively link a negative medical outcome from use of a substance, especially if it's something like cancer that comes on years later. And you'd think, after all of this, we would have learned. And there have been some positive changes to the way we talk about diet, nutrition, other people's bodies, kinda, for some of us. Your boomer aunt is still probably gonna comment on your weight. People regularly still get asked if they're pregnant when they're not. People who lose weight because of illness or mental health struggles are congratulated. Even the body positivity movement has the toxic trait of policing people's bodies, mainly women's bodies, as was exemplified in a recent incident where Lizzo posted publicly that she was trying to lose weight, she did some sort of juice cleanse, and people were pissed. Because especially when it's a fat body, everyone else believes that they know better for what is in the best interest of that body than the owner of that body does. And there has been an increase in awareness and empathy that obesity is more prevalent in people who have experienced trauma, poor people, people of color, that people have varying genetics and we're not all supposed to look real thin, and that beauty and health comes in all shapes and sizes. But of course, where there's profit to be made, a business will figure out how to exploit it. Enter Noom, the weight loss app that's supposed to be anti-diet, touting a program that uses psychology to help people lose weight in a healthy way, while at the same time requiring its users to weigh in every single day, and then giving foods an arbitrary score based on arbitrary ideas of what's good for you. It's weight loss culture repackaged to be palatable for 2023. Though I will say people are slowly wising up. But I will say I think the most concerning thing that I'm seeing is the growth in the use of weight loss drugs that I've been seeing all over TikTok and Instagram, where users claim that a simple weekly injection is helping them lose weight. And yeah, maybe it is, but if history tells us anything, there's a possibility that that drug is going to have dire side effects for at least a portion of its users sometime down the line. Most prominently, I've seen an increased growth of the use of Ozempic, which is a diabetes drug that's become a viral weight loss sensation, with people like Elon Musk boasting that they use it. And this drug was first approved for use in type 2 diabetes in 2017, aka not long enough ago for me personally to be comfortable with it. Another drug called Wegovy is a popular drug that is just a stronger version of Ozempic, and it's marketed specifically for weight loss. That one was approved in 2021. Very recently. And guess what? This desperation for people to get their hands on these weight loss drugs is causing a shortage of Ozempic, so that people with actual diabetes have to call multiple pharmacies, drive around town, and search for the drugs that they need, sometimes without being able to find them and fill their prescriptions at all.
Some celebrities and social media influencers are using a new diabetes medicine to lose weight, but their popularity is causing shortages.
Both are so popular, some doses are in short supply. Troubling for people using Ozempic to treat diabetes.
In a recent Forbes article, the chief of clinical nutrition at UCLA said that people should be wary of using these drugs because the longest study done on these injections was conducted over less than 2 years. A lot of questions have not been answered. Sound familiar? Seems like a class action lawsuit waiting to happen, frankly. So, is thin coming back in? All signs point to yes. As with any cultural phenomenon, it's impossible to point to the exact reasons why something is happening, but my theory is that it's a combination of things. One, big butts, thick women, they've been the trend for at least probably the last decade. Cultural fads swing on a pendulum, and when something goes extreme in one direction, with the height of the extremely dangerous BBL reaching fever pitch in recent years, I would call that a level of extreme. And then once it reaches that level, it will invariably swing to the other extreme in the other direction. Combine that with the fact that most people I know gained weight during COVID. I know I did. I gained 30 pounds during COVID, which if we're going by the Bridget Jones standard we were ingrained within our youth, is an earth-shattering number. And then we had to go back out into the world and see people and learn to properly dress our new bodies after wearing only soft clothes for 2 years. I don't know about you, but it was fucking harrowing. Okay? And yeah, full disclosure, I have been working to lose the weight that I gained because it's just not the body that I want, and the weight gain was also the result of incredibly imbalanced hormones that I needed to treat, and I felt horrible all the time. I've been documenting that journey on my Instagram stories if you're curious, but part of me feels guilty for even wanting to lose the weight because the body positivity movement is just as guilty of policing women's bodies as the heroin chic movement. We're supposed to just love the bodies we have and never want to change them in any way. Or that's how some in the body positivity movement make it seem and made me feel. But you know what? Fuck it. It's my life. I do what I want. Okay? And I have been doing it the old-fashioned way with the help of a doctor. I've been just eating fewer calories, focusing on vegetables and proteins and healthy fats, and moving my body more. Very boring. Not a quick fix. I've also been taking some supplements at the direction of this doctor, not for weight loss, but just to give my body the nutrients it needs to be able to fix its hormonal functions and get them back to normal, which has been working. But it was really, really emotionally difficult to exist in the world in my bigger body. It was the first time that I was not able to go into any store that I wanted and find my size. And my internalized fat phobia came rearing out of me now that it was directed at myself. There were beliefs that I didn't think I had because I would have never directed them at another person, but they were suddenly the only thing I could think about myself. And the body dysmorphia came back as bad as it was when I was a teenager watching Bridget Jones cry for weighing 136 pounds. And I know that my experience is not unique. That mess, combined with the natural pendulum swing of culture, yeah, it makes perfect sense that Kim K is dissolving her BBL and the runway models are getting thinner and people are reaching for the nearest, quickest fix to make the pain of existing in society in a bigger body go away fast. And frankly, I think more lawsuits will probably come from it. Sorry to leave you on kind of a bleak note with this one this week. I hope you've enjoyed this one. The YouTube algorithm thinks that this video is one that you're gonna wanna watch next, so I would definitely click on it. You gotta follow the algorithm gods. Thank you for being here. Let me know in the comments below what you want to see from me next. It's the new year. I'm feeling fresh and I'm ready to take it all on. So come on down and let me know what you want to see. Okay, bye.